Hello and welcome to everyone who is watching the Written in Melanin channel. Wherever this day may have found you, I am so glad that you are here. My name is Chelsea, better known as CM Lockhart, and I am here with the one, the only, the debut author, Emery Lee. And we are here today to talk about her book, Air book, Meet Cute Diary. And if you guys have not picked up a copy of it, please do yourself a favor and go get one. It is a wonderful book, and we are going to be talking about it today. So, that being said, this is one of the few pre-recorded videos on the channel. So, if you don't want spoilers, we're going to try to be spoiler light for you. But if we do enter that territory, I will warn you so that you can make an educated decision about what you want to do with your life. All right? And I will do my best to enter the timestamps down below. No promises, but that way you can skip over it if you like to do it. That being said, fair warning, there may be slight spoilers for the book, but nothing too bad. And if you don't want spoilers, just buy the book. You know? Saying. It's linked down in the description box below. Alright, that being said, welcome to the channel, Emery.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, alright, I have a ton of questions for you, but for the people who are the unfortunate souls who have not read your book yet, what can you tell us a little bit about your book? Like, what is your elevator pitch for your book?
Absolutely, yeah. So, Meet Cute Diary is the story of a trans boy named Noah who runs his own romance blog full of trans meet cutes. But when the blog is targeted by an internet troll, he has to prove its validity by staging a fake relationship with one of the blog's fans.
I love it. So there you have it. Like, off the bat, we've got fake dating, and there's other things involved in this book, but we're going to get to that in a moment. And I am a sucker for a good fake dating trope. So when Drew, who is the one who is like, hey, like, I can help you out with this, was like, hey, let's see where this goes. Okay, Drew, I see you. All right. So, but all of this stems from the troll who is trying to like disprove the diary, right? So one of my questions that I had for you was, the Meet Cute Diary is actually the name of the blog that Noah is running. So what kind of, like, I want to know, like, what prompted him to be like, oh yeah, the stories are true, knowing good and well he was making them up as he went along.
I mean, poor Noah. He's in over his head from the beginning, and I think part of it is just that he's like such a dreamer, and he has like these like big ideas and these big goals that are not really realistic. But so ultimately for him, like the blog, he has this, which I guess is a little bit real, but he has this, impression that the blog is super important for his readers because a lot of them will say things like, this was the first time I saw a trans happily ever after. It was the first time I thought I could get a happily ever after. So he really believes that, if people find out that the blog isn't real, that all of that magic and all of that inspiration is going to be gone. So for him, it's kind of just like this desperate need to like, convince his readers that like they can have good things and that happiness is out there for them. And the only way he could think to do that is by saying, instead of just coming clean and being honest about this and like hoping that people still support the blog, I'm going to create this entire massive scheme that will then convince people that I never lied at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think everyone kind of can see where that kind of goes for him. But
yeah, that kind of spirals kind of quickly. But it does work at first, and I really liked it at first. So not gonna lie. I love the book, but Drew at the beginning had me a little like, this is a little too easy. Wait a second. So, that being said, I have a couple of questions about Drew too. But before we get into like, my specific questions, right? I wanted to know, like, are you one of those writers who creates your characters based off of people that you actually know, or are they completely made up? Like, what are the inspirations for your characters?
So I mean, I'm the type of writer who believes that everything in life can be inspiration. So I pull characters like from people that I know. I pull characters from like random like internet scenarios, or sometimes from like other media that I've consumed. In the case of like Noah, he was largely inspired by like who I just was when I was his age. And so it was kind of like a look at like if I had known I was trans at that age, and then basically just threw myself into the story.
Mm-hmm.
But for the other characters, they're kind of like spot picked, like inspired by people that I know, or also inspired by like other characters or tropes, or like just certain elements that I kind of knew I would want in the story.
Okay, that makes sense. Like, whenever I talk to authors, I'm always curious. It's like, do you have that one person who's going to read this book and be like, "Ooh, you were talking about me, weren't you?" So it's like, I love it when it's like, yes, also because the drama, right? We live for that. But also, I like when it's pulled from different people, because then it feels like a completely unique character in the story, you know?
Yeah, like I used to tell people that I would write characters based off of them, but then I got like so like squeamish about it, because I was always like worried, like, oh my god, what if you like think that I hate you, or like this is so awkward, I'm just not gonna do that anymore.
It's like, see, the key to that is to do it and not tell people. That's the key.
You know, but then I'm always worried that I'm gonna slip something that's a little too obvious.
Yeah,
and they're gonna be
personal.
like, that's me, you did this, and I'm gonna be like,
I mean, if you identify, that just means I'm a good writer, right? But that being said, like I said, Drew, I've got questions, and I would very much like answers if you feel like divulging a few. So the first one being, okay, so this is kind of a spoiler. Gonna warn you guys, all right? A little spoiler here. Drew and Noah are not engaged, right? So, but there is a moment when they're arguing, and Drew is like, I had to take a back seat in my own relationship to the diary. So I was like, did Drew actually really like Noah, or was that just kind of a ploy for his own means, I'll say?
I think I always feel like when I leave things a little open, I kind of like to give people like the room to kind of have their own interpretation of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I will give you like my interpretation of it. Like as I wrote it, I kind of had this idea that Drew was also into Noah, but like in the same way that Noah was into Drew, where it was kind of more of like the activity of it all, and like the excitement of it, and like, you know, the celebrity status that came with it were kind of like the real appeal.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Drew in his head really thinks that he genuinely cared about Noah and was like making like, you know, the perfect moves to make their relationship like healthy, but like in reality he was kind of starstruck and like caught up in like, oh my god, this is so cool, and that was more of where his motivation came from.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to think that one day in the future Drew will acknowledge that for himself and realize this, but I also don't know.
I respect that, like, but also like I don't know. I respect that very much. Because I remember like watching the relationship, and like part of it for me, I was like, ooh, like he's not listening to you, Noah, like, please, baby, don't jump off the cliff. Don't jump off the cliff. Oh, he jumps. Okay. Because, and not to like derail us, but I remember like the first time I got into like ice cold water, because like I'm sort of like, my dad is very much South Carolina, so he's from South Carolina, so I'm very used to like warm beaches. It's kind of like Noah. And so when they were like, ooh, it's cold, and I was like, wait a second, like we don't even wear shorts around these parts and we're jumping into water? Wait a second. This doesn't sound like the best idea. But then I also like, I really connected with Noah in a lot of ways, because not only is he like a super anime fan, but he's also very much about the aesthetic, and he's not an outdoor person surrounded by the outdoors. And I was like, that is not my life, I swear. So when he was like, you know, I'd rather go to a cafe than go hiking, and that hiking trip, first of all, what was the inspiration for, I don't know why that had to happen, but also why poor Noah had to go through that, because I felt that in my bones. And I was like, dear God, like a 2-mile hike off like randomly, not prepared. So I guess questions. Not just going to like rant and rave about how well you wrote this character, because I identify with them so much. But
I feel like with so for the hiking thing, that was honestly like pulled from kind of real life, except for me it was with my sister as opposed to like with like a love interest.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I go on vacation with her, she's a very outdoorsy athletic person. I'm not. So she'll be like, yeah, we're just gonna hang out, like we're just gonna like, you know, like walk around, check things out, okay, cool. And the next thing you know, like 11-mile walk later, she's like, yeah, Yeah, so like I just remember thinking like this bitch is so lucky she's my sister, because if she was anybody else, I'd be like, no,
No.
like no man. And so I was thinking like, imagine like going on a date with someone, I'm treating you like that.
Like honestly, I respect Noah's commitment to the diary so much, because at some point I would have been like, you know what, this for the birds. I'm gonna call me a Uber. Like the moment the little kid with the grandma passed him, nah. I'm gonna call an Uber. We're calling it quits. This is a lost cause. But then they got to the top and they were like, I ain't got no water. And I was just like, for real, bruh. You just pulled me on a hike and ain't got no water. I'm supposed to thirst out here. Okay. And here's my thing about hiking. Here's my thing. It's great to see the view, but you know what's terrible? You have to go back, and you walked here, which means you have to walk back. That's a terrible idea. Who thought of that? That's a scam. It's a whole scam. Okay? But I want to say that I felt like Noah was a really, really, really relatable character. So I'm really glad that you wrote him. And I just had so much fun reading the book, because he was like, coffee, yes, bring me a vanilla latte every day. And that's why, like, honestly, that's why I thought Devin was so wonderful. I was like, bless this person. Bless them. Because there's no way. Like, I was a teacher for a very brief moment. Another reason why I connected with Noah, because you wrote this moment in, and I have this highlighted to tell you this. There's a moment where Noah is with the kids, and Devin's like, I gotta go to the bathroom. Can I leave them with you? And he's just like, I guess. But also, can you just pee on the floor over there in the corner? And no. Like, I felt that in my spirit. So thank you for writing that.
Yeah, I think people underestimate how much of like Noah's plight was based on like real things that I had to do when I was in high school. That I was like, no.
Please don't. Like, please do not make me the adult in the room. I don't want to be.
Right. Like, no, like I didn't sign up for this. Like, there's a reason I don't have kids. I don't know what to do with kids. Like, that's not a me thing.
Like I'm cool with them, and I say this all the time. Like, I'm cool with kids as long as they are with the person they belong to, and I am not responsible for them. Right? It's like, but don't put me in a room with multiples of them and I have to be in charge. No, thank you. No, thank you. Who do you belong to? Because it's not me.
Yeah, it's like that's yeah. I don't know.
But speaking of the camp, so there was a point in the story where I was like, I felt no when he was like, I just want to go back to work. Like, I don't even want to be here. I want to go like see Devin. But their meeting was less than meet cute. So, what possessed you to write that?
So what basically the setup with the story was, I wanted people to really fall in love with Drew at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like it really necessitated not expecting there to be a second love interest. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, I feel like that happens a lot with like YA, especially when like love triangles were like this huge thing, mm-hmm. Where people kind of you use the second a character is introduced, if you know that there's going to be like another love interest, you automatically know like who to doubt and like what not to like, and like what to look for, and like all that kind of stuff. I wanted people to kind of get wrapped up in Drew the way that Noah did, and just kind of like get lost in like, oh, he's doing this thing that's so sweet, and like, oh, he's so thoughtful, and like, you know, oh, I love that he's so dedicated, like all these things, without realizing like the little red flags here and there where, mm-hmm. you know, maybe he wasn't listening to something that Noah was saying, or like he was prioritizing things that Noah, like that kind of bothered Noah and they just couldn't talk it out. And so in order to kind of like keep that, you know, focus on Drew, at least at that moment, like, because at that point he hadn't really done anything.
Right.
That would like make you think, oh, they aren't meant to be together. I was like, well, let me introduce Devin, but let's make it something that's like memorable, but also not going to make you think, oh, that's the love interest. Like,
nailed that, because I was just like, I respect Noah, because we would have been throwing hands. Like, we have to fight now. We have to fight. First, I'm gonna barf because I'm covered in barf. But then after that, and once my guts are empty, we're throwing hands because you just projectile vomited on me the moment that I laid eyes on you, and that's not okay.
originally, and there actually was a like more of an argument going on there where Noah kind of like yelled at Devin, but like originally I had Noah like lose his shit, and it was like this whole thing. And then my editor was like, "You think Noah comes off a little mean here?" So I was like, maybe, but also like
it's deserving. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna be nice to you, homie. You just threw up on me, and I don't know you. Like, it's bad enough when a child does it, like a literal infant does it. But you're a whole person. Like, you're about to be a whole adult, sir. Like, no, thank you.
Yeah, so ultimately we ended up cutting the like real fight that went down there, but yeah, so that was I feel you on that. I was like, God, this is like
okay. So that was cringe, but also the screaming, I also felt that in my soul. Like, I feel what else are you gonna do? If you're not gonna throw hands, just scream like, ah! And I feel for him, his whole wardrobe was like gone by the end of the summer, I feel like.
Yeah, well, and especially because he just insisted on wearing like suede pants to like a summer camp. Like,
who wears suede in the summer?
Like, he's not smart. I mean, to be fair, it was probably only like 50 degrees out, but still, like, I feel like this kid is just, like I said, I feel like he got a wake up call by the end.
For sure. Excuse me. But I also really enjoyed Noah's parents and how they were like, so like, okay, we're trying, and how Noah notices when they're like, oh, okay, they're getting my name right, they're getting comfortable with this. And it was just like the moment though when he was like, oh, wait a second, I went to go buy a latte and they said no. Hold up, pause. Wait a second. Try that again. What do you mean it's not working? And I was just like, man, you're so lucky. Your parents got you a whole credit card and you just out here having fun. And and all you have to say when it doesn't go through is like, try that again. And then they give you a perfectly reasonable reason. So I guess my question is, why wasn't Noah thinking that maybe, possibly, getting a job would be a good idea before he was broke?
So one of my favorite rom-coms is Clueless.
I love Clueless. Okay.
I love Clueless. And I feel like, so I know a lot of people have been like, why is Noah so like why does he lack so much like basic awareness of like anything in his life ever? And I'm like, because he was partially inspired by Clueless. And I feel like for what it kind of came down to was there were a few moments throughout where I was kind of like, maybe I should make it where like, he volunteers to get a job, or he like thinks about getting a job. And then I was like, what I love about Clueless is that like this girl is so dumb and like, she just lacks so much basic awareness, but I feel like it's like in an endearing way. Like you're kind of like, okay, yeah, like this girl she doesn't have a clue, but like, she's cute. We support her. Like, we're here for her. And so I feel like we don't really get that with Black main characters or or like trans characters or queer characters in general. Like I feel like we're like marginalized characters are always expected to be aware of everything. Like we have to know about oppression. We have to teach everybody else about oppression. We have to be aware of like negative things at all times. And so I love the idea of just having like, this kid who's, he's Black and he's Asian and he's trans and he's all these things, but he's just, his parents have just given him what, they're like, no, we're just going to take care of you. We're going to not make you realize what it means to need to get a job. And and so I think to a certain extent, like, I mean, I feel like at that point was when his parents were like, okay, yeah, we let you get away with too much. Like, no, you need to get a job. Yeah. But to the idea that just kind of like up to that point, like, he was allowed to kind of just chill and just do what he wanted to. And he was never really, and I think I've had some people say stuff too, like, oh, like he's so confident and he's so like loud and like obnoxious.
I love that about him though, because it's just like, when you like so many times in like YA, when you read it, it's like the character has to find that confidence, and I'm like, no, Noah came in with confidence from day one. Like he knew exactly who he was, what he was doing. He's like, bet we moving from Florida, okay, let me get ready. Like he knew, and I love that about him, and especially, and I feel like that showed a lot in his interactions with Devin, because when I think we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but part of the story is that Devin is trying to figure out his pronouns throughout the story. And I love how when Noah is talking to him, he's like low-key like annoyed, like rolling his eyes, like they're your pronouns, like whatever works for you, that's fine, just tell me what they are and we can keep this moving, like it's not a big deal. And
yeah, I really did want to give Noah that chance to just, you know, have things figured out. I mean, not most things, not, but like in that regard, like where it wasn't like, I feel like marginalized characters very often tend to be very like timid and like very like Devin, like, can I take up this space? Am I allowed to like feel this way? Am I allowed to have that confidence? And I was like, no, fuck it. Like Noah's gonna have all of it. Like he's good. Like that's it. Like I just like the idea of a character who was never really hindered by like those expectations and like that, like, you know, external bigotry and like all those voices telling you that like you have to be quiet. So I was like,
I love that, because I talk about this on the channel all the time, just about how characters, specifically Black characters, have to be so mature all the time, and they never get a chance to like make mistakes and figure things out. And I like that in your book, Noah is not figuring out who he is necessarily. He's trying to like find a nice medium, I'll say, to like find love, you know, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's the correct way to word that, but he's not wondering about his identity. He's not going back and forth with that. He's not, you know, like you said, he's confident, and he's not trying to explain that to everyone. And I like that you showed that with Drew. Like he's not trying to turn him into an activist. He's not trying to change him. He's just like, this is who I am, and he lets himself be that. Like he lets himself take up that space. And I just like Noah so much. Like he was such a good character, because even the times when he was low key, not gonna lie, side of this coffee shop for 3 hours for your brother to come get you, when you clearly said this isn't walking distance, so we could have just walked back. Like priorities, maybe, because I know that coffee did not last that long.
Yeah, Noah's so lazy. He's so lazy, and like I relate to that because I'm lazy myself. But yeah, he's so bad.
Like that sleeping until noon. Like, how dare you come get me? This is how I knew that Drew wasn't gonna work out. Not even gonna lie. Okay, this is not a spoiler. This is just a Chelseaism. Okay, when Homeboy said get up at 8, and Noah was like, okay, I was like, see, you don't understand me on a fundamental level. You're not understanding who I am and what I need. Because if I just told you I worked and I'm tired, right? Why are you calling me to get up at 8 o'clock on a Saturday? First of all, who are you? Are you mom? Are you dad? Why am I getting up at 8 o'clock? Would love to know. And then what I liked that Drew was thoughtful and like trying to plan all these events and came up with a list of like 10 things that you have to do, right? Which also, what else was on the list? Just curious.
I don't have a whole list.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I did not write one. I mean, I already wrote the other lists, and I was like, I'm out of lists, but I can pretend there's a list, and there's like.
I love the honesty. I love it. But oh, that lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. I can't remember. It's gone. But I just like it. Oh, there we go. I love that Drew called himself being thoughtful, but I also liked I saw the red flags where I'm just like, why is all this stuff outdoorsy, right? And I know that's kind of like one of the big red flags that I'm assuming you wrote in on purpose, but I was just like reading it and I was just like, because as we said earlier, I am not an outdoors person. If you ask me to do an outdoor activity, I'm assuming that it's from walking from one building to another. That is the extent of my outdoor activity, okay? I don't want to go on a picnic. I don't want to sit in the grass beneath the trees. I don't want to run through no flowers, jump in no lakes. I like indoor pools, okay? Preferably hot tubs with ceilings. right? But I was just like, Noah, listen to Becca. She's telling you right. She's telling you right. Like, if you don't like doing these things, it's great to be pushed out of your comfort zone from time to time. To, like, maybe go on a hike that you're prepared for and knew was coming so you can mentally prepare for. But also maybe not, like, every single activity. Like, the fact that he was excited, that he was like, yes, we're finally going to a cafe. And then was like, oh, okay, this is not the extent of it. We still got more activities. So.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, and this is like, this has been my experience, but I feel like a lot of people start dating people and they instantly find themselves doing things that they don't actually enjoy doing. And it'll be like, and like, I think to a certain extent, like, for instance, if you know, your significant other is like, hey, can we watch this movie? And then we'll watch that movie that you want to watch. Like, that's totally fine. But like, I feel like I see a lot of people just kind of getting caught up in like these circles of things that they actually don't like and are not enjoying. But they kind of feel like, oh, but like, you know, relationships are about compromise, or like, you know, like that type of thing. And it's like, for both of you, like, if only one of you is compromising, that's not a good thing. Like, that's a problem.
There's a... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I feel like a lot of times in YA and like in media in general, you kind of see like, oh, look how cute this relationship is as they push each other out of their comfort zone. But I don't feel like you ever really see that line where they say, okay, but like up to a certain point, otherwise it's kind of unfair. So I kind of wanted to like play around with that a little bit and kind of show like, you know, yeah, like at first it seems kind of cute, like, oh yeah, well, while you're in Denver, you should try some of these Denver things. But then it just kind of becomes like redundant, like I don't want to do that. Why are we still doing that? So
yeah, and I really like that Brian calls him out on that. Like, you're doing stuff that you don't like to do and that you wouldn't normally do. So how is this okay? And no, it's just like, chill out. I got this. No, good. Well, you ain't got this. You ain't got this. But I 100% agree with you, because I remember like having conversations with my friends in college, and it was just kind of like, you know, because I've been with my husband for a very long time. Well, very long. I say very long, like, oh, we've been together for 20 years. No, but but we dated in college, and I've known him since my senior year of high school. So we've been together for a while. And so like in college, our friends would ask us, well, my friends would ask me, rather, our friends, loosely, right? But they would be like, so like, what do you do in like literally the scenario you just said? Like, you know, this, my significant other, not going to use names, right? But my significant other wants to go do this and I don't want to do it. I was like, don't do it. Like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. It's not rocket science. If you don't enjoy something, there's a difference between compromising with someone and being like, okay, like you said, I'll watch a movie that I'm really not into because you like it, and straight up doing something you don't feel comfortable doing. Those are two very completely different things. Like, if you're not an adrenaline junkie and you don't want to jump out of plane because you're afraid of heights, then maybe you shouldn't date an adrenaline junkie who wants to jump out of planes because they like the rush. That's probably not a good match.
Yeah.
But that being said, of like stuff that they don't want to do, I know at one point, like, they went to a party in the book, and Drew had a friend who was like, oh yeah, my ex-boyfriend invited me to an anime watch party and it was so lame, ha 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 ha. And all the while Noah's like, oh, but I like anime, so let's just cross that off the list, not gonna do that. And I was just like, him and his brother were watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, really great anime, by the way, which brought me to, what kind of anime does Noah watch? Like, I'm curious. Or you watch, or any of that. Do you watch anime? Or is that what
I do. I watch anime. Yeah, I would never. I'm of the mind that I should never like name drop something if I don't actually know anything about it, because I don't want to. Like, I've already had a few interviews where people be like, "Oh, so what's your favorite anime?" So if I didn't watch anime, that'd be so embarrassing. I'd just be like,
just pull the one out the air.
Yeah, just like make something up. I mean, you could probably just like string words together and you probably stumble upon an anime name. But yeah, but for Noah, he watches a lot of like shonen, a lot of like actiony stuff. And he watches a lot of like the throwback stuff, because that was kind of like his thing with like his brother when they were younger. They would watch a lot of like cartoons and like anime together. So I know, I think the only two that I name dropped in the book were My Hero and Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I feel like that's kind of like, it gives you like kind of like the idea of like his scene. Like, I was like, no, I was earlier before we started at streaming, I was like reading like the top of your shirt. I was like, you can become, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, with all my Indeku.
Yeah, like wait a minute. But yeah, so I think he's mostly like a shonen type, and like Becca also does anime. She's more into like magical girl type stuff, so I feel like they also like watch that stuff together. Yeah, no, I feel like Noah's very like I'll watch your favorite show at least once to see if I like it kind of person. So
I can see that vibe in him.
Like he'll judge you based on it, but he will watch it with you. So there's that.
Absolutely. I can see him kind of being like, oh, so you haven't seen this? That's kind of sketch.
Yeah, like you gotta believe he's the type of person who will be like, here's a list of 27 animes you need to watch by Friday. Like, come back when you're done. Like,
it's like we can discuss this after you've seen all of them.
Yeah.
So, do you have a favorite? So, I know Noah likes shonen, but what about you? Do you have the same taste, or?
I mean, I feel like I have like moods. So like, if I'm in like, sometimes I'm in a mood and I'm like, I just want to watch something gory where like everybody dies.
Yeah.
So like,
thank you for understanding that is a mood. Like, it's a mood. It's not, I'm not crazy. I didn't lose my entire mind. Like, no, I just want to see everybody die. Thank you.
Yeah, like I feel like sometimes you just get in that mood, and like then I have like a list of shows that I love, like for that, like yes, everything's morbid and everyone's like bloody and stuff, like mood. And then I have like I feel like I watch a lot of shonen. I watch if anything is like, gay, like if someone's like, yeah, there's like gay in that, then I'll usually watch it because
So are you a fan of Yuri on Ice?
Yeah.
Because I love Yuri on Ice. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I'm obsessed. And Given recently, I watched that one. I'm obsessed with that one too. It's so cute. And then yeah.
Okay. I'm having a moment
yeah,
because of like. Sorry.
Yeah, I feel like my taste ranges from like really dark and gritty stuff to like the cute like slice of life like rom-com type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I tend to watch things that have like a sci-fi or like fantasy element like the most, I think, because I don't know, like the speculative stuff really gets me. So
I'm with you. I watch a little bit of everything. So, and if anyone who's has been on the channel before knows that I love anime and I can talk to you about it forever. My husband and I do a little, like, we have our own little thing off to the side called I'd Rather Anime, where we talk about anime, have like a little podcast and stuff that we do. But I'm not going to derail us from what we are here to talk about. But I was curious because I was like, ooh, he likes anime. All right. And then he was like talking about manga and stuff at the bookstore. You know what? I will say this, and I want to give you kudos for this. I was so sure that he was going to get that job at the bookstore, but when he was like, I guess I would call the cops on them. And she's like, ah, guess you're not cut out for this. Love that. Because I was like, all right, no, not to go to that bookstore. Like, it's unnecessary, sir. I lost the receipt. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was another one of those scenes. Originally, he did get the job at the bookstore. Mm-hmm. And then when we went to edits, my editor was like, I feel like there's just like too much going on. So I was like, well, we can like make it where he doesn't get the job. And it just ended up being like, how badly can he botch this interview? And that was basically what happened.
Well, I think calling the cops on the customers is probably really bad. The worst you can get. Well, just right above stealing from the register. So I have a question for you, and obviously this is kind of veering a little bit from the book, but we also talk about writing a lot on the channel. So one of the questions that I have for you, because you mentioned that your book has gone through edits, like what was that process like for you? Because I know that there are people who watch the channel who are like various stages of writing their books, and some who want to go traditional, indie, whatever, what have you. So what was that editing process like for you? Because I know you mentioned that it's gone back there a couple of times.
Yeah, I think the thing that people also like don't realize until you're like in the industry is that like by the time it even gets to your editor, that book has been edited so many times. Between like just like revising with like beta readers and all that kind of stuff, and then like my agent revised it. I think we went through like 3 rounds of like revision before we even like sent it out. And then after it sold to my editor, we did a couple more rounds of edits. So I think like at the beginning, like when I was revising with my agent, the changes were a lot bigger because it wasn't as like clean yet. By the time I got to like my editor, the changes were a lot smaller because one, she bought the book like with those edits in mind, but like also just like because it had been through so many different rounds. But basically it was kind of like I feel like ultimately what the revision process usually looks like for me is kind of like just agent, editor, somebody basically being like, here are the things I didn't understand, here are the things that like just aren't believable, like how can we kind of like change this, and I basically just say like sure to everything. I feel like I'm pretty open when it comes to edits. My biggest things are just like anything related to like identity. Like I'm not going to change a character's identity or like their experience with that identity, assuming it's my identity, because I feel like I know my own identity well enough to be like, that's my identity. I'm not changing that. But like, and then like sometimes like, for instance, what I thought was funny was my editor was like, is there a way that we could get him to like monetize his blog or something? And I was like, no, it's a Tumblr. Like she didn't really know what Tumblr was. So I had to like explain. I was like, listen, you can't monetize a Tumblr. Nah. I'm like, Yahoo tried to monetize Tumblr. Look how that went. Like,
I mean, like, and part of me was like, okay, so not even gonna lie, there was a moment when Noah was taking shots at millennials and like they're not all 40 and married already, and I was just like, oh, shots, okay, baby, hold on. And I was like, I know what a Tumblr is. I know what followers are. Don't try to come for me like. But I love that it was so relatable. Like there are little things like that. Like I love the fact that it was a Tumblr blog because it's just like a bygone era. Like I remember when everybody was on Tumblr and then Tumblr changed and then everybody was no longer on Tumblr. But
the thing is that Tumblr, I feel like is so out of touch. I feel like with like everything, because I've been back on Tumblr in the last couple of years, and like people are still there, but like it's just its own community now. Like I feel like the people who are on Tumblr, a lot of people who are on Tumblr are kind of like just not fans of other social media, so they stay on Tumblr. And so like I feel like it just becomes, and I feel like that was part of what made it so perfect for like the story I was trying to tell, was just that it's this community where like you kind of are so involved in it that you don't realize that, like, remember, it's just one social media website. Like even if things don't go well here, you could always just move on with your life.
Right.
And so yeah, I feel like part of it just for Noah, how like wrapped up he gets in the blog and how like he feels like, this is the end of the world if the blog doesn't work out. I feel like it was like perfect. Like it's kind of like that space, I feel like, with a lot of people. And I think back when I was on Tumblr, like religiously, I did have that mindset too of like, I don't want to go to the other sites. Like I like this one. And then, you leave, realize that you're better off without it. But
it's like, oh, so this is what it's like to be liberated. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, right. Oh, right.
But no, I kind of like that aspect of Noah because I feel like that's just like one aspect of being a teenager is like where you feel like the thing that you're doing right now is the most important thing ever, and you can't just like let it go, especially when it does come to social media. It's just like, and especially like when you put like your blood, sweat, and tears and hard work into it, it's just like, and then the thing that also about Tumblr is like, he is the mod. Like people know him by name. It's not like he is, got the not anonymity. I always mess up that word. Anonymity of the internet, right? But he's also like building up relationships because that's how social media works. Like you get to know people and people follow your blog and you talk to them and you get to know them. So I like that as the story went along, you could kind of tell how things were starting to spiral by just how many like notifications he was getting and how many he hadn't responded to, because like part of me was like, you know, especially in the beginning when he was with Drew, I'm like, you're happy, baby. Just like live in the moment. Like, just be there, right? But then also, it's just kind of like, you might want to make a post and be like, hi, I'm living in the moment. Please don't harass me for pictures of every little thing, you guys. Because people will 100% be like, ooh, I want to see everything. Are you there? Hello? Hello? And it's just like, you guys, space, breathing room, a little bit. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
But also, and like as the story went on, right, Drew was like, hey, I can help with the diary. Like, he just kept pushing, like, I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of it. So I kind of, if you know, like, what was kind of like Drew's mindset with that? Like, why was he so desperate to like take over the diary from Noah?
I think it was, I mean, not so much that he was like, I want to take over, but more so that he was like, I want to be appreciated, like, as a celebrity. Like, because Drew, so I mean, you see a little bit too of like Drew's kind of like home life, and just kind of like his situation. Like, he's got parents who do not pay any attention to him, and like even like his brother, like where he's basically like taking care of his brother because his parents are so caught up in their own like relationship problems that they're not really like part of anything. And so like for Drew, he's kind of like lacking that like affection and that like, you know, appreciation from like, you know, his family. And like you see him with his friends too. Like, he has a lot of friends, but he's not that close to anybody. A lot of them, it'll be like, oh, we haven't seen you in like 4 months, and he'll be like, yeah, I was working, and like, so he just has like this. He has a lot of like these surface relationships where he's just not that close to anyone. And so for him, like that you know, that serotonin rush you get when you make a post and it gets hundreds or thousands of people like responding to you. Like, he's used to making a post and like no one seeing it. He has like, you know, 27 followers. So like to be able to like interact with like the diary's followers and get like all that like love and affection, he's like, oh my God, people love me. Like, you know, I have to keep interacting with these people because it makes him feel so good. And so I think he kind of like just kind of like gets lost in the rush of like, oh my God, like people are celebrating me. This is so cool. That ultimately it becomes like, Noah, give me the blog. Give me the blog. I need it. I need the blog.
Becomes like an obsession.
Yeah, exactly.
Got you. I don't know. I'll say this. I liked all of your characters. I thought all of them were really well written. Like, all of their dynamics, from Noah and Brian and their brotherly relationship to his relationship with Drew to like Brian and Maggie. Because, okay, can we talk about Maggie for a little bit?
I thought I was gonna get in trouble for writing Maggie. I thought
Why?
I was waiting because Noah makes so many white people jokes about her. I was like waiting for someone to be like, why did you make all these white people jokes? And I'm just like, because I had to.
It happens. But so I guess that was one of my questions I was going to ask you. Like, I know that Noah does not like Maggie, and there are obvious reasons that I'm not going to spoil for you guys, but there are obvious reasons at the end why she is very much not the greatest, right? But in the beginning, like, what? Okay, other than like, okay, I'm not even going to try to project my thoughts onto it. I'm just going to ask you straight up, why didn't he like her? Like, she seemed like she was trying.
Okay, so like two reasons.
Okay.
One is that he sees her, like, you know, when you like meet somebody and you're like, this person reminds me of like all those people that I just don't really like, you know, like where you're just like, oh, like she's one of those like, you know, like those like pretty white girls who's like, you know, like sorority-esque and like all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, Noah's like a nerd, like he's like a little, he's a little nerd, and he's like, ugh, like those people, like, but then, like, those people. Yeah, those people. Like, I feel like it's just like, you know, when you're like, oh, like that guy don't vibe with this person. But the real reason he hates Maggie, like the deepest core reason, is because he's jealous. He's just like, he's like, man, this chick shows up, and also my brother don't got time for me, and he's all like, oh, look at this pretty white girl, like, and he's like, man, like, stop talking to the white girl, like, hang out with me.
He's like, I'm just trying to watch anime with you, bro. Like, please.
Like, you know, so I feel like that was, and I think for Noah too, it's like a mix of like, you know, just like that jealousy, like that, like, you know, everything is about me, like stop, ignore her. But then also just kind of like that feeling like Brian moved away for a year, so he's now been living like, you know, in Colorado because where he goes to school. And so he's a very different person than he was like when, you know, he still lived in Miami like with his family. And so for Noah, it's kind of like, oh, he's different now. Like this is Maggie's fault. Like she's the reason that he is not, you know, like the same, like our relationship is different, and why, like, you know, he's like, you know, pulling away, which he's not, but like Noah's like, yeah, like, because he's so caught up with this white girl, and now he's gonna start acting white and like that kind of stuff, and it's just like,
and I'm just like, all this while he's like embracing his culture and like trying to make different foods, and I'm like, I respect Brian because he's cooking for himself. Like, bruh, do you know how rare it is for a college student, a single male college student, to cook for himself and it be good? Baby, stay in your lane, okay? Maggie knew what she was doing. Maggie knew what she was doing. All right.
I was like, I know, and I'm like, you're like, it's like, Noah, you're getting all this free food. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Like, you could be like, okay, I don't have a credit card, and we need to eat out every night. What are we gonna do? Could be on you. Brian could have been like, well, I have a job, so I'm gonna go out and get a pizza. Good luck. So I loved Brian. I was like, that he's like the epitome of the big brother who is there for you, but also like not smothering. And I was like, I'm here for it. I'm here for all of it. And I loved Devin. Devin was great. Like, he was so sweet, and he was just, I just wanted to hug him, you know, and just be like, oh, it's okay. You're loved. You're fantastic. You bring coffee every day. Like, I need a friend like that. I would love anyone who brought me coffee every day without question. Like, I relied on it like the sun. Okay.
Like,
so, okay. Question: does Devin ever actually get mad about things? Because Noah questions this. We never get a clear answer.
I love that question. So that's actually really funny. So that was actually kind of inspired by one of my best friends, because he doesn't get mad like over pretty much anything. And so I was like, you know, and part of it was I was kind of like, you know, I'm someone who gets mad very easily. So I was like, it's amazing how well like we work together, just because I get mad over everything and she doesn't get mad. So I was like, what if I gave Noah somebody who doesn't really get mad about things? So Devin does get mad, just very, very rarely, and generally only over things that are like injustice.
Okay, I can respect that. Like, my brother and my dad are very much like that as well, so I'm just kind of like, would love to know what that feels like, to just like let everything roll off your back. I just don't know. I can't imagine. I take some things personal, so
yeah, I'm like, I can't relate, but I respect it. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's a wonderful trait. Wonderful trait. Don't have it, but I respect it. I appreciate it in other people. Oh, okay. So one of the things, like, I think we mentioned this earlier, is that throughout the story, since we're talking about Devin and how great he is, but in the story, he's trying to figure out what their pronouns are, right? And so, what made you decide to write that into Devin's character instead of just having them be what they were going to be from the beginning?
So I feel like, so my first thought was, I was like, I want to include neopronouns, just because I feel like we don't really see them in books a lot. A lot of people kind of don't really know what they are, or they know what they are in theory, but have never actually seen them in practice. Which is funny to me, because I actually have known so many people who use neopronouns. So when I talk to people who are like, what is that? What is that? And I'm like, oh my God, people don't know what it is. So I was like, okay, I want to incorporate this into the story, but I want it to be really like natural and normalized. And I don't want it to be like one of these things where it's like, let me explain to you the definition of neopronouns and like how this works. Like, it's a very like heavy-handed way. I was like, I kind of just want to integrate them in naturally. But I also wanted to give the context so that people who've never heard of them aren't just like, why are there so many typos? Like, why did you like mistype all these things? So I was like, okay, let me do it in kind of like a gradual way, where like it's kind of like an exploration thing, because it kind of allows me that like that growth from like, Devin starts with he him pronouns, then goes to like they them, and like this is where like things are a little more familiar for like the average reader, and then he goes to like Zer pronouns, and like I feel like that's where people are like, whoa, what is that? And it's like, just kind of like to like give that trying to just kind of like show that to readers, like it doesn't stop at they them. Like there are so many other pronouns out there, and I only used a couple examples of neopronouns in my book, but there's so many of them, and to kind of show readers like how they work. Like I feel like seeing like Devin go from like he him to they them to Zer, that gives you that like ability to like kind of see like how the pronoun sets actually like play out in practice, and also just kind of like to show how easy it is, like when someone says like, hey, can I use these pronouns? It's like, of course you can. Like,
like they're your pronouns.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're your pronouns. I will learn how to use them, and I'll use them. And so I kind of wanted to just kind of like show that process and like make it like seem like a very normal and like acceptable thing that you can do. Because I feel like a lot of the time when you hear about them, a lot of times it'll be from like a cis person or like from somebody who doesn't use neopronouns. And so it kind of will get this like othering to it, and people will be like, oh yes, like if you want to be one of those people who uses those weird pronouns, and it's like they're not weird pronouns, they're just different. Like they're just something that needs to be like learned more about and like understood and recognized, and it'll be just as normal as any other pronoun that you use.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm not gonna lie, I was one of those people where I was just like, I had never encountered them before, so as I was reading it, I was just like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And I even really liked that Noah would check people when they used the wrong version for Devin, and they were like, just no, that's not what we're doing. Noah was like, nope, just be clear. And he kept with it as Devin's pronouns changed, which I appreciated, because I was just like, it's not, and maybe it's the wrong thing, but I was like, it's not about being perfect, it's about being consistent and respect. And oh, hold up, my computer glitched. Hopefully we're still good. So, I was like, wait a second. Okay. But that being said, I do have a couple more questions for you, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Otherwise, I will be keeping you all day asking you questions about this. So first thing first being, obviously, we've talked a lot about this book. And for anyone who wants the, I was going to try to be savvy. It's TLDR, too long didn't read, from Reddit or Tumblr, wherever. I was like, so if you could have anyone know anything about this book, right, before they pick it up, what would it be? Like any one thing, just one.
It's a rom-com.
Okay. I love how you're prepared for that. Like,
yeah, well, it's been a conversation I've been having with people for the last like few months, like even like literally maybe 3 or 4 months before the book release. Was a lot of people have been very confused because they're not familiar with what a rom-com like actually is, because in publishing, it's very common for the words contemporary romance and rom-com to be used interchangeably. So you'll have like, a coming of age book that ends like, with a romance, and people will market it as a rom-com. Meanwhile, the book is extremely serious. There's a lot of like heavy issues and like, like a lot of like, political discussion and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, that is not a rom-com. That is a literary novel with a romance at the end.
Yeah.
So, and then on the other hand, like Miku Diary, I've had people like pick it up and say like, so this is a contemporary, right? And I'm like, well, it's contemporary in that it takes place in like a modern real world setting, but it's not contemporary meaning literary. It is a rom-com. So it is a comedy in which the main plot is a romance. So
Thank you
like
for breaking that down. Thank you. Because I thought that was like second edition is like rom-com, romance comedy, like that's
romantic. But I think a lot of people don't realize, and I've had a lot of people be like, "Oh, I wasn't expecting it to be so lighthearted and funny." I'm like, "Well, it's a rom-com. That's what they do." Or like, "Oh, like why isn't there more like exploration of like Devin's trauma or like Noah's coming out or anything like that?" I'm like, because it's not a coming of age story; it's a rom-com. So like,
and maybe it's just me, but I was just kind of like, I kind of enjoyed that wasn't the focus, because I feel like there are lots of books where that is the focus. And so, like I said in the beginning, like I like that Noah was confident, like this is who I am, and it's not about you know, Noah being a trans boy, right? Trans boy. I didn't mix this up. Okay, sorry. I'm trying to get it right, and this is still very new to me, so apologies if I mess it up. I swear it's not on purpose, but yeah. So I just like that that's who he was, and he was confident in that, and it wasn't like he was trying to work through the trauma and the heaviness of that. He was just like, okay, bet, cool, and we pick up from the story where he's already good with that. He's already had that conversation with his family, with his friends, and he's like moving on to, I don't say the rest of his life, but you know, as a teenager, the things that are important to teenagers of any type, like where am I going to be? What am I going to do without my best friend? What am I going to do this summer? You know, I'm stuck in a closet. I don't have any money. Like, how am I going to solve this problem? You know, oh, there's this really cute person that I'm kind of into. I wonder if they're going to talk to me. Oh, snap, he told me to get out of line. Guess this isn't the meet cute I wanted. You know? Like, I enjoyed that a lot. So
yeah, I think, and the thing is, I think part of the issue kind of boils down to, we don't have other trans rom-coms, and like we don't really have a lot of other queer rom-coms in general. Rom-coms, at least rom-coms in general, I feel like are often very straight, and often very white. And so I think people saw, you know, trans person of color, and they think of the other books that are trans people of color, or like trans people in general, and they're not rom-coms. They're very, you know, they're coming of age stories. And so it has been very hard to like explain to people, like, no, like, I know what you're thinking, and I know that you've heard that Felix Ever After is a rom-com, but it's not. And like, neither is I Wish You All the Best, and like, neither is Stay Gold. They're not actually rom-coms. They're coming of age stories. This is a rom-com. And so I think in general, it's been very interesting trying to like explain to people like what the actual genre of the book is, so that their expectations are actually right when they pick it up.
But I feel like you have a great cover though to like show that that's exactly what it is. So that's why I'm also like,
I think what it is that publishing has spent a long probably like last 5 years marketing contemporary books that are not rom-coms like rom-coms.
Yeah,
you know, so the second this one shows up, they're like, oh, it's one of those, and I'm like, no, actually, this is one that's actually a rom-com.
Like, it's actually marketed correctly, you guys. Just let
it's actually marketed correctly. Is that all the other ones were wrong?
That being said, speaking of your cover, okay, who is on the cover? Is it Drew or is it Devin? Because
it's Drew.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to double check and just wanted to know. Just curious.
Yeah, it's actually it's like a little chronicling of their like relationship, like the stuff that they did.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I was just like, let me just go ahead and ask, because I'm not trying to be wrong in the future. So, but two more questions, and at least on screen, because we have to wrap this up. First one being, what is coming up next for you? Is there anything that you can share? Anything that you're working on?
So I'm working on a couple different things right now. The only thing I can share publicly is that I have a short story in the All Signs Point to Yes anthology that comes out in 2022. And that story is a cute little rom-com type story with this boy who is a brujo, and the popular kid at his school comes into his parents' magic shop to basically be like, I need a cure for heartbreak because I just broke up with my girlfriend. And so in trying to help him find the cure for heartbreak, he starts to have feelings, and that is the premise of the short story. So that is currently the only thing that I can actually say publicly, which is great because it's publishing where, you know, you can have so many different things and you can't actually share any of them.
Yeah.
But I am also working on another rom-com. It is a rivals to lovers, or enemies to lovers, coffee shop rom-com.
Okay.
And then I'm also working on a contemporary fantasy, and it's a slow burn romance, enemies to lovers romance, or childhood friends to enemies to lovers,
Okay.
contemporary fantasy.
Oh, that sounds so good. Okay, you guys, so make sure you keep an eye on Emery Lee and all of that. Air? Help me. Is that the right pronoun? Air? Doing?
Fair, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, keep an eye out for sure. I know I am. And last question, and I ask everybody this. If you could give your younger self any writing advice, what age would you go back to, and what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, so I would go back to probably just before middle school, because that was when I first started writing. And I would basically just tell myself, like, you can write whatever you want to write. You can write what works for you, like if that's fan fiction, if that's, just like documenting your day, like that's totally okay. You don't have to write based on what seems the most academic, or like what seems like, the closest thing to like those popular like white people books, or like anything like that. Like ultimately I feel like as a kid there was a lot of pressure to try to write what was seen as like professional writing, or like what was on shelves, which was largely white authors. And so there was kind of this expectation that if I spent my time just kind of writing fan fiction, or like my own little like, scribbles and stuff, that was not as good, or like that was a waste of time. And so I feel like if I had realized at a younger age that authors don't really know what we're doing, and we're just kind of like writing, whatever works for us at the moment, and like just kind of like building on that, I think that would have made it easier for me to kind of like discover like my voice, and like exactly the type of writing I wanted to do, instead of spending so much time working on books that ultimately would never amount to anything, because they were so, contrived and so like generic, just because I was trying to make them sound like something that I never wanted to write.
I think that's good advice. I think that's something that I say this all the time, but I'm like, if I could tell my younger self, it would be so much, because I was like, there's so much good advice that I wish I had known earlier. But definitely that, like, write what you want to write. Even like reminding myself that as an adult, like, it's okay. Like, you don't have to sound like all the things that you've read before. Like, it's better if you don't sound like all the things that you've read before, because people don't want to read things that they've already read before. They want new things. So
yeah. And I mean, something I've heard is like, if you try to replicate something, you're always going to be short of that thing. Mm-hmm. So like, if you think Stephen King is the best author ever, and you just try to copy Stephen King, then all you're going to be is mediocre Stephen King. Like, you're never going to be like actually Stephen King. Right. And so I feel like I really took that to heart. I don't know why. I feel like I take mean advice easier than like nice advice. But I feel like that really rung true for me. Like the idea that like, oh yeah, like you can try to be this other author, you're just going to be the mediocre version. And it's like, hey, I'm not going to do that. Then I'll try to be something else. I will try to like make up whatever, because at least that way, like I know that I'll be better than just the mediocre version of somebody else.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it's just like, I know we don't really talk about him anymore, but like, Dr. Seuss was like, there's only one you. You're the only one who can be you, and that's like real advice in everything. Although we don't talk about him on the channel anymore. But seriously, like, you're the only person who can tell your story, and you're the only person who can tell it the way that you can tell it. And like, there's definitely something to learn from people who came before you, and definitely something to be gleaned. Like, there's always more information to glean, right? You never stop learning, right? But also, you have to be yourself. Like, you are the only person who can be you, and trying to mimic anyone else, you're going to fall short, because you are not them, and you will never be them. Like your example, you are never going to be Stephen King ever. You're never going to have his exact life experiences. You're never going to have his exact life and the things that go through his head at the time they go through his head to write the stories that he's writing. It's just that's not how it works. Mimicry always means that something else came first, right? So I'm not going to rant. Not gonna do that. But that's sound advice, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate you so much for coming on the channel and talking with me about your book and sharing it with the Written in Melanin audience. Like, I'm so, like, when I really tell you that I love this book, I appreciate you and your team so much for
Thank you so much.
letting me read it and like interview you and talk to you, because this has been so fun. And I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna ramble. So, that being said, if you're watching this in the future, please go ahead and tap the like button for this video. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications so you don't miss any more author interviews. Also, tune in on Tuesdays when we do the Melanin chat and we talk about all things Black and bookish in writing. And if you're interested in books by Black authors, or you want to see more about the Meet Cute Diary, you can definitely check out the melaninlibrary.com, where we have books by Black authors. We're pushing 1,500 books at the time of this recording, and you can check it out. See the description, see the cover, nice and big and pretty, and get your own copy if that's what you want to do. So, that being said, thank you for watching all the way to the end. Feel free to leave something down in the comments because it's free. Why not? And that's it. So, until next time, you guys, we hope your days are lovely and your books are interesting. Bye, you guys.